Yeah, you know what time it is. Valhalla Hour, let's go.
There we go. We're live.
Put on your headphones tight. Rob and Matt bringing fire every night. From the land of 10,000 lakes, we rule the scene with
Well, good afternoon.
so fresh, keeping it raw and clean. Minnesota Vikings, kings of the north. We wear our purple heart and let the battle roar forth. Breaking down the game, dissecting the plays with passion so fierce, we'll set the night ablaze. So give us a follow, hit that like. Share it with your crew, you know we're about to strike. Valhalla Hour podcast, living life bold, where legends are made and stories are told.
This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
How's it going? New intro debut. Kind of a live reaction there. Matt and Rob couldn't be here. They had some unfortunate emergencies pop up over the weekend. So it's got me and Southern Soul Eric here today for now. Maybe some more will come through later, but just us two starting off the show today. Sorry we're a little late, some technical difficulties as well, but we're good. We're rolling.
That's good. Good to be here.
Not that there's a whole lot to talk about today. Obviously, OTAs haven't really started yet. Yeah, Luca, we're still only going until 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a cool week, really. Lots of rumors, lots of, it's that time of the year, I guess, till OTAs kick off.
Right.
Yeah. I saw stuff about the Brandel getting cut or Brandel getting traded now that we got, Donovan Jackson and Shaq Griffin maybe going back to Seattle and
no.
Maybe I saw an article he might be signing back with Seattle and then Dalton Risner possibly signing with 49ers but it's all, speculation, clickbait stuff,
Right. Yeah, we did have the week of rule proposals, I suppose. We could talk about those a little bit.
Yeah.
What didn't go down? Oh. So I guess it's just me. The rule proposals this week. Obviously, we had the whole tush push rule proposal brought up by the Green Bay Packers, which was voted down, I think, 22-10. Needed 24 votes to pass. I'm glad it didn't pass. I think that, 1 second. There we go. Yeah, I'm glad that tush push didn't pass. I think everybody, right. I think everybody has the ability to use that play. Obviously, Philly is just a little more dominant because they have such a beefy O-line, and Saquon Barkley can squat a VW bug. Or not Saquon Barkley, sorry, Jalen Hurts. But, I'm glad the tush push is here to stay. There's no injury risk with it. It's just people's only complaint is that, it's hard to stop. Well, sorry.
Yeah, I think the biggest argument is on the other side of the ball is you're not allowed as a defense to push defensive players into the same situation. So I think that's your biggest argument there is why is it okay for one side but not the other?
That's fair.
I think that's the biggest argument because it is a rule that the defense cannot push another defensive player.
Yeah.
So, to me, that's the only thing there. And I'm honestly not super stoked about NFL players being in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Give somebody else a chance. I wasn't happy when they did basketball and hockey. And the Olympics is supposed to be about amateurs and getting, you used to have amateur status to be in the Olympics. It's not that way anymore. You get the pros in there and it's revenue. So that's basically what the Olympics have now become, to me anyway.
Yeah, I know the NFL kind of gave the authority for players to do it if they wanted to, but we all know it's going to be like with basketball. It's going to or not basketball, but it's going to be a bunch of XFL players or UFL players that end up going over there. I can't see legitimate NFL star talent going and playing in the Olympics.
I hope not.
As far as will our QB1 miss games 1 through 4 for the first of his kid? No. This is going to be kind of dark, but players play when close family passes away just because they use it as motivation. I don't think McCarthy's going to miss the first 4 games of his first season starting. I think he'll be like, I'll see you on Monday and Tuesday, but I got to practice and I got to play.
Yeah, I didn't see all that. I just saw something, a little clip on that. So,
yeah. Maybe he'll pull a Rudy Gobert and kick her out until the end of the season. Who knows? But speaking of basketball, that's kind of why I'm with you. I don't want our star players or just our starters in general playing in the Olympics because Anthony Edwards played in the Olympics and he got kind of gassed towards the end of the playoffs because he hadn't taken a legitimate break. And then in the same thing this last year, he played in the summer games and now in the Western Conference Finals, he's getting kind of gassed, even though he's only 23. But he's been playing consistent basketball since like June. He honestly hasn't had a legitimate break in almost a year. So there's that to look at as well. You don't want them getting injured. You don't want like they need their recovery time.
Yeah, because basketball season's long enough the way it is, and you start putting. It goes from what, November to June.
Yeah,
Legit.
I think it starts like mid to late October.
So you brought up UFL players being in the Olympics. How about this? In the top 15 defensive rated players by Pro Football Focus, 3 of them had at least a practice squad time with the Vikings. 3 of the top 15 defensive players. So Marquise Gates, I think he was on the practice squad for like 2 weeks, is the 3rd best, highest ranked player in the UFL right now. Cam Dantzler is 9th and the number 1 corner with over 150 snaps. And Kenny Wilkes is 12th.
Yeah, you've mentioned Dantzler a few times on this show. He must be having a solid season.
Yeah, I knew he was playing and I didn't know who he was playing for, and then I just happened to turn on. I actually have it on now, but it's on rain delay, so they're replaying an old game or weather delay.
Okay.
I shouldn't say rain delay, weather delay. I turned it on like 2 weeks ago, and he had just scored a pick 6. I was like, "Holy shit, Dantzler actually is playing." And then,
Bring him in.
I was like, "Damn," And I did about 5 months ago, read an article about him where he admitted that he was just not mature, didn't take the game serious, and just wasn't all in. And now he's trying to make his comeback.
Okay.
Realizing that he had talent and he needs to take, serious if that's what he wants to do. So maybe he did turn a new leaf and maybe he'll get a second chance. I doubt it'll be with the Vikes, but maybe.
Yeah.
We liked him when we took him. I didn't realize that there was going to be immaturity issues that way. And I don't think it wasn't like immaturity getting in trouble. It was just like probably didn't pay attention in team meetings, didn't take practice.
Right.
So maybe he catches on somewhere else. I hope he does. He had talent.
It's a huge jump going from college ball to pro ball because, granted, college is obviously a very strict program, but it's collegiate ball. You kind of have that party atmosphere, that kind of star vibe, and then you go to the NFL where it's a job, it's a legitimate business, and you like, granted, there's 1 game a week, but you have to put in the work, and I think that's got to be a shock for a lot of players, especially ones that I'm not saying he just kind of coasted through college because I'm sure he was good and he obviously got drafted for a reason, but yeah, it's got to be just a major shock that, oh shit, I can't just give it 80%. I have to give it 110% 7 days a week.
And I think a big change that'll help a lot of these rookies come in, and to me, it's not a positive, is the NIL. So they're getting money now. So a lot of them aren't going to have this issue on their rookie contracts of blowing all their money and buying big houses and buying cars and buying mama a house and all this because they're getting the money in college now to do that.
Right.
So hopefully, if I can, take a silver lining out of something I'm not a huge fan of is with the NIL is these guys who do come into the NFL will already have hopefully some kind of financial maturity out of it.
Right. I feel like we've discussed this in last offseason of the NFL just needs to implement, if they don't already have, a mandatory financial advisor for at least the team, just someone that young players can go to when they get drafted that the team has as a resource to be like, hey, don't go out and buy that $2 million house and that $600,000 Rolls Royce quite yet. Maybe wait till you get your first big contract, because rookie contracts, while it's a lot of money for the first time seeing it, could go away very, very quickly. And that's why we do see so many pro athletes going broke when they get out. So the NFL could, all major sports could do a lot better at having that kind of resource.
I think they do have. They have like a rookie symposium where they have a lot of former players and stuff go talk, and they do have former players and financial advisors speak. But the thing is, I think you're right. Having one on the team, maybe they may take them a little more serious, and maybe not. Oh, this guy's up here talking to 300 of us, instead of, hey, let me sit you down one-on-one and show you what can happen if you don't do what if you just do what you think you want to do. So that
right.
Speaking of that too, we have a lot of nice transitions so far. I was reading an article about the undrafted free agents and how we guaranteed money to a lot of these players. So I think we had 6 undrafted free agents who have guaranteed contracts of $234,000 and got signing bonuses of anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000. This is smart. I didn't think about it and I didn't realize it. That's what they would make if they spent the entire season on the practice squad anyway.
Okay.
$234,000. Now, if they're on the practice squad and they get poached by another team, we're not on the hook for that, because they have to sign. They can't just go from practice squad to practice squad. They go from our practice squad to their roster. So that no one voids that contract.
Sweet.
So we don't lose. It's not a lot of dead money involved in that contract style. So, and I can't believe other teams haven't thought about it or said something, or they probably are. They're just, I just saw it because it was written about the Vikings, but that they figured out the math. This is what you'll get for 17 weeks or 18 weeks on the practice squad. Here's guaranteed that if you stay with us.
That's cool.
That's smart financial thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
I think.
Man.
I know. I don't know what the Vikings would do without him.
I don't want to know. He needs to stay. But I mean,
he should be our biggest cap hit.
What's that?
I said he should be our biggest cap hit. Pay him whatever he wants.
Right. Yeah, him and Flores. No, you said, we're just getting good transition. Speaking of rookie contracts, those 2 major, the Cam Ward and the Carter contracts, 4-year rookie guaranteed, $46 to $48 million before they even see a snap on the field. The freaking cost for guaranteed rookie deals for a top 3 pick in the NFL these days is insane. Like, think about it. It was 6-7 years ago when we gave Kirk 3 years, $90 million guaranteed for a top 10 starting quarterback, and people lost their minds. And now the number 1 pick, who hasn't even taken a snap, is getting $48 million guaranteed for 4 years. That's be nice.
Then the 5th-year option is what? Some kind of, I forget how. There's a formula for figuring out the 5th-year option, but
isn't it like an average of the top 10 paid or something?
It's something like that. It's. I mean, because if you look at 5th-year, the 5th-year option, it always jumps up a lot. I think Jefferson's went from like 11 mil to 19 mil, when he went from year 4 to year 5, but then they restructured the whole thing with his extension. So,
right.
They jump up quite a bit, and it's really, everybody talks about it's nice to have that 5th-year option with your first-round pick, but, man, it's almost getting to the point where that 5th-year guaranteed money only saves you if they pan out and they're going to go get a big free agent contract.
Right. Well, it's the same thing when I see people saying, like, well, yeah, we technically have them for 6 years because you can have them for the 4 years and then 5th-year option and then franchise tag them. And so it's the same thing. And once you do that 5th-year option, the franchise tag is an average of the top 5 paid. So, you technically have him under contract, but you're not saving money. You're just pissing him off because you're not giving him a long-term stability. and you're not saving yourself any money. So I never understood the hook, never understood the hype of the franchise tag, unless you're like actively working out a deal and you want to just get him paid for one more year. But the tag and trade talk that we always see, I never understood the hype behind that, because it's just, it can bite you in the ass so many ways. And we talked about it with Sam Darnold, where hey, let's tag and trade him. It's like, okay, you can, but if no one bites, then you're on the hook with him for $41 million. And do the Vikings want to take that chance, even if it's only for a year?
Right, right. I mean, you have to have that trade set up in, theory, in, good faith with another team saying, all right, we're going to tag him, and then you trade us whatever for him, and then you guys can negotiate the future contract. Or
Right.
that contract probably has to be done prior to signing the trade over, as far as for the player wanting to be traded. So yeah, there's a lot of risk involved in that.
Right.
But yeah, the franchise tag, I think you're right, is you have to go in with uh, a positive. You're going to get a long-term extension done before the tag kicks in.
Right.
What's that one? Thoughts on how well J.J. McCarthy will play this season? Honestly, it's so hard to judge. He had such a great preseason game.
Right.
And then got hurt, so we don't know anything as far as his mental coming off the injury. He seems very, very good and very ready, and the coaches are talking him up. But I mean, we set up the offensive line for him to succeed. We have two good running backs. The offensive weapons are there. The defense looks stout. So, as long as he doesn't try to play above his comfort level, I'm not going to say his ability, because he's got tons of ability. I think his comfort level is the big thing, because he's got the confidence. If he doesn't play above his comfort level, I think easily 25 plus touchdowns and 3,500 yards without
Right.
trying to force too much.
Yeah, it's kind of I've been going over the last few weeks, kind of a pros and cons list of like reasons I think he could succeed and be a good quarterback in his first year versus reasons I don't think he can. And obviously, this just sounds like a Viking homer bias, but there's a couple, like obviously the whole main reason of why he might not be good is the unknown. We just don't know. He is coming off a meniscus. It's not an ACL, it's a meniscus. He's been fine for a couple months now. I have zero concern that his knee's going to be 100% by the time the season starts, because it's already at 100%. But that's really the only thing that I can think of. Like, if you look at his knocks of his college game, it was, well, he was a handoff merchant. He had a strong run game and a good O-line, and he wasn't asked to do everything. Well, that's going to be the same thing here. We don't ask our quarterbacks to do everything, and we went out and beefed up our O-line. We went out and signed Jordan Mason because we want to make sure he's got good protection. We want to make sure he's got a good run game. But the thing he has here that he didn't have in Michigan is receivers. Like, I think, he.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I understand he had Loveland, but I mean, outside of that, I think his top drafted receiver was a mid-second rounder. So it's not like he's out there with a Dunzeys and the Matthew Goldens. Like,
right. Yeah, and I saw that Bynum did an interview last week, and they asked him about JJ, and he's just like, the dude was there every day. You don't expect a rookie on an injury to be in the building every day doing, not more than just their rehab. He was in team meetings. He was asking the defensive players why they did this or how they did this or why were they in this coverage, asking tons of questions. So mentally, he's, I think, more than prepared. And I think his understanding of the game is off the chart, and to be fair, I was not a big fan when we drafted him. So I was on the Bo Nix train all the way.
well, you're right about that, because he's really good.
His mentality going in is he's tough. He's got comprehension of the game, and I think, like I said, to me, as long as he doesn't try to do more than he's asked or more than he's comfortable doing, he's going to shine. He's going to. I mean, they're talking about him already being one of the top candidates for comeback player of the year, and he's never taken a snap in a regular season game.
Right.
I mean, that's insane.
Well, and last year, KOC and Kwesi both came out in the preseason and said, like, we have these benchmarks that we want JJ McCarthy to hit before we feel comfortable with him taking over the starting position. And he never even trained with the ones. He was practicing with the third squad. And even with that, they were saying after he got injured, like, he cleared those markers way quicker than we expected him to. And he just kind of blew everybody away with his ability to pick up the offense and look like, hey, I belong here. And we've said it before on this podcast that, like, obviously it's different in hindsight because Sam Darnold started off so strong so quickly. But, like, if he had it, they were planning on starting McCarthy way sooner than later last year until he got hurt. So this year, with being able to train with the one starting at OTAs and having an entire offseason with Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, like, yeah, like you said, he's got the mentality locked down. He's got that playbook memorized. He's been watching the VR practices. He was at every game last year with the helmet on so he could hear Darnold read off the play call so he can kind of feel what it's like to be in the huddle. Like, mentally, he's got it all unlocked. He just has to translate it to the field.
Yeah. And like we were talking, he's got Michigan. He had 2 good running backs. He's got at least 2 good here. And we had just talked about the UFL, but we signed Redmond last year. Their season's almost done just in time for OTAs. I guarantee Kwesi brings in at least 1 or 2 guys that shined either at like a running back or a corner to come in and give some competition. I like the kid with the undrafted free agent out of the Jacksonville State, the running back. He's a good player, but I don't think Ty Chandler lived up to expectations.
Yeah.
We added Felton, who's going to be a massive weapon. And I feel bad because I think Naylor's the odd man looking in now. If Moore lives up to half of the expectation, Naylor's the odd man out. And Felton's, I think, going to be very comfortable stepping up and stepping in. So,
Yeah, with Naylor being on his last year under contract, maybe this isn't KOC stuff, like maybe they give him some targets just to kind of help him on the free agent market next year. But at the same time, if they do just decide to kind of not bench him, but demote him to wide receiver 4 or 5, I mean, so be it. It's his last year under contract. He's only a wide receiver 3. It's not like we're losing a major piece there if Felton and Moore end up being as good as their athleticism can be.
Yeah, exactly. I just the ability to assess players is so difficult, and Ty Chandler looked great his first season when he had the chance. We always have these players who stand out in preseason, but man, you just hope, and like the defensive line last year looked not bad. You had Tillery and Bullard, and I was just like, are these guys going to be what we need? And you have to trust, as a fan, you have to trust your team, your GM and your coaches, and you don't always agree. I know most of us don't agree with some of the calls or some of the starting assignments, or and it's hard to assess on the outside looking in, and they have a better view, so you kind of have to, like I said, trust them. But I was not a fan of Tillery and Bullard. Well, Tillery more than Bullard, but I wanted to see more Kamani and Redmond and LDR, and we just didn't see it. And it's like, why? They never said why. They didn't say why. And you have all this young talent, and you want to see it. And every team has it, they do. And every fan's going, why aren't they playing? And like Cam Jurgens, why don't we hear more about him? Or Rouse, why don't we hear how he's doing? You never hear, and I get it. These coaches don't want to talk about their future players or people who they may cut or release and want to sign back to practice squads or whatever, because you don't want to hype them up. But when towards the end, when Brandel was going through a rough stretch, and why isn't Rouse in there? Or why aren't we doing this? Or why aren't we doing that? And it gets frustrating.
Right. Well, like you mentioned earlier with the guaranteed contracts for the undrafted free agents, last year we were all listening to the Vikings gave a ton of money to Gabriel, undrafted free agent. Like he must show something that the Vikings are really hyped about him. And yeah, like we just never really saw him see the field. So it's like, okay, like I get that we're top heavy, but at the same time, like if there's some games where the defense is slipping, like the Packers game in the fourth quarter, where we're just getting diced, throw him out there because clearly what you have on the field is actively not working. So I don't see the harm in kind of rotating those players. But like you said, you got to trust the coaching staff.
I mean, yeah, it's a tough thing, and then when your favorite player or a player you really like doesn't make the team or gets traded or gets cut, you wonder, well, shit, they showed out real well, they looked good. All of a sudden, what happened? I was going somewhere with that, and I completely forgot now. But
well, then they go somewhere and end up popping off. You're like, God damn it!
Right. No, but last year we waited till the very last minute to bring Reisner back, and it's like he played well once he got in there. I think the only sack he gave up all season was in the playoff game to the Rams, which I think everybody gave up a sack that game except for Bradbury, of course.
Right.
But you wonder why a guy who knows our offense could be very good depth. Haven't drafted a player as high as Jackson at guard before, but we've taken third round chances on guards and expected a lot. We've gone through a lot of growing pains in that interior offensive line, from Drew Samia to Pat Elfline. We all these high hopes for these guys we get in the second, third rounds, and it's just devastating. And you would think that bringing back some experience to the team that somebody already knows it had some success would be a wise move.
Right.
But like I was saying, you got to trust them that they're. I had a teacher who always used to say, "There's a method to my madness and a madness to my method." So that's kind of the philosophy I take with Kwesi, because even in the draft, this is what, his third draft.
Yep.
You never know. I do 1,000 mock drafts, but you never know what he's going to do because he is so. And I think it's what's good about him too is he's so unpredictable. You don't know what he's thinking, and he brings a whole different mentality to the draft and trading and free agency, because he's not a true football guy. It sounds weird to say, but he didn't grow up wanting to be a GM. He was a Wall Street guy and switched over, and he brings that aspect of unpredictability to the draft that it already has, and he just makes it more.
Right.
So.
Well, that was kind of the knock.
Oh, go ahead.
So, like you said, that was kind of the knock about him when we signed him, was like, that was the immediate report. Was, well, he's an analytics guy. He's a Moneyball guy. But he'd also been in Cleveland when they brought in Myles Garrett and started really turning that franchise around. And he was in the 49ers front office when they started making all those Super Bowl appearances. Like, granted, he's a Moneyball guy, but he's been around GMs and coaches that knew how to assess talent, that knew how to build winning teams, even though Cleveland's not. Like, they're kind of in the same boat that we've been in. Like, they have a good team. They've just had really mediocre quarterback play. So if they get something out of Shadur Sanders, who knows what their limit can be? Like, their defense is still really good. They got good players on offense. They just need someone to facilitate. So I think the first couple drafts obviously were a little rocky because the first draft we still had Spielman's scouts, and Spielman hadn't had a good draft in 4 years. And then the second year we got Addison, a couple good rotational players. And then last year we're still waiting on the return for McCarthy. Dallas Turner looked good when he was on the field, but he didn't see a lot of snaps in his rookie year, which Neil Hunter didn't see a lot of snaps in his rookie year, so I'm not panicking there. But it seems like he's trusted Flores more. He's trusted his new scouts a little more, and we've been seeing some early better returns. But when it comes to free agency, when his money ball analytics does come to play, he's absolutely been crushing it. And I think that's why like a lot of people still want to buy because his drafts are producing a ton of all stars. But I mean, he's still obviously producing a team that's able to win double digit games almost every year, and you can't do that by being a bad GM.
Yeah. Yep. And I think even though that first draft wasn't that great for him, I think over half those players are still on a team somewhere in the NFL.
Right.
You know, they might not have worked out here, but they worked out somewhere. You know, they moved on. So it wasn't like maybe it wasn't the ability to find the right player. Maybe it was the ability to find the right player for here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I want to say like 5 of those players are still playing in the NFL, or 4 of those are still in the NFL. Just on, not with the Vikings anymore. It's
Right.
just,
Well, Jalen Naylor, like we were just talking about, he was a late round pick in that draft, and he's our wide receiver 3 and will be unless someone else cannot play him. But like he was a 6th or 7th rounder, and he's still earning his spot on the field and getting consistent targets.
yeah. I mean, he's definitely working his way through his growing pains, maybe. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, he came in with some injury question, and maybe not the best. Well, shit, he broke his leg doing a backflip, or sprained it. I had a high ankle sprain doing a backflip, celebrating a touchdown. So, yeah, because you look at what year was that? That was 22, right? That was his first draft. So Asamoah, Ty Chandler, Jalen Naylor. Well, yeah, they're all with the team yet. Ingram, we just traded to another team. Scene and Muse with the Eagles. Vidarian Lowe, Caleb Evans, and Andrew Booth are the ones I really don't know about.
Well, Andrew Booth went to the Cowboys, but I think he got cut.
Oh, and the kid from the Gophers, Otomewo. I think he's with Jacksonville now.
Okay.
Maybe. No, Pittsburgh. He started 2 games last year with Pittsburgh. So, I mean, the ability to find the talent was there. Maybe it was because, that in his defense on that first draft too, we came in with Ed Donatel as a defensive coordinator, and got rid of him the next year. So a lot of those defensive players maybe didn't get a fair shake,
Right.
or didn't fit the scheme of Donatel, didn't make that team. Then we switched, and they could have been better under Flores. What's the question here? Is he injured? I thought he was projected on a 4th or 5th round. I don't think so. I didn't see anything about him being injured. I think he just fell in the draft.
Yeah, it just happens to some players that, I mean, the linebacker that we got in undrafted free agency was valued as a 5th rounder, and he didn't even get drafted. So it just.
Yeah, that's who I think they were asking about.
Oh, yeah, fair, Batty. Then on the flip side, you have like what the Packers did last year, where there was a linebacker that was valued as a 4th or 5th rounder, and they took him in the 2nd round, and everyone screamed that it was a massive reach, and he ended up being the best rookie linebacker in the NFL last year. So that's what makes the draft so fun and unpredictable, or is the unpredictability.
Yeah, you look at all the experts who were up in arms because we took Ty Felton at the end of the 3rd round, and he was a 4th round draft pick, or 4th round grade on him. 1 pick difference, and you're
right.
You're causing no, I don't think he was injured. He played 13 games last year, unless there was a after after the season injury.
I mean, it could be a poor combine performance. Maybe he just, yeah, I'll take it. And I agree. Look, our front seven's going to be insane this year. I mean, it's like everything. It depends on if they can stay healthy. But my God, just bringing in the defensive tackles we brought in, the draft we had, I'm super hyped for. Gosh dang, I'm blanking on his name now. The guy that we got out of Georgia, the defensive end slash defensive tackle.
Oh,
Um,
Ingram. No.
yeah, Dawkins Ingram.
Fucking Ingram or something. Yeah, hang on. I
Yeah,
have the.
like that's the thing that I like to see about the culture change from, like you said, with Donashell to Flores. It's just the pure aggression, and we got people like Ivan Pace that can just, even being only like 5'9" and 80 pounds soaking wet, can level people on their ass just because he's so aggressive of a hitter. Has a really good center of gravity, good nose for the ball, and that's exactly what we brought in on O line this year. It's just that kind of mauler intensity, and same thing with defensive tackle. Just people like we saw the legitimate playoff teams last year have just that bully ball mentality. We brought in that aggression, and Brian Flores has that aggression. And I'm excited. This is the first year of KOC and Flores and Kwesi having their vision come to life. Like they got their quarterback now. They've had their free agent splurge. They've had their fourth draft. Like this is the team that they've envisioned since they got here, and I cannot be more excited to see it.
Yeah, we again talk about great transition. Ivan Pace is in a contract year because he's undrafted. He's in a restricted free agent year. Sorry, and with what's his name? Oh, Warner, the linebacker.
Um,
Shoot,
yeah, I'm spacing.
49 Fred Warner.
Oh yeah, oh god, yeah.
He just signed a 21 was it 4-year, $84 million contract or something like that. It's about 21 million a year is the average payout. How does that affect Ivan Pace in this upcoming year? Because I know the contracts we signed with a lot of our free agents we brought in this year are low money this year and bigger money next year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you score on a free agent, undrafted free agent, you you take that risk because they don't have that long-term contract like we were talking with your 5th-year option on your first rounders and 4 years on your other guys. It's 3 years and they become restricted. So, if he has another stellar year, I know last year was a kind of a letdown with injuries, but if Pace Jr. has another stellar year this year, what kind of contract are we looking at for him? He, like you said, he's a bowling ball. He has a nose for the ball. He makes plays. I think he blitzed on an average of 4 times more than anybody else in the league. He just has that dog in him, and and he's the little dog that wants to win the fight.
Right.
It's kind of a catch-22 when you get hit on that undrafted free agent, because now you're stuck. Do you trust to give him a big time contract, or you take your chances with the restricted free agent status and all that? But I
I
mean,
think that's probably the most likely. Just sacrifice the cap hit, put a high tender on him, and hope that if someone does buy and takes him, that we can walk away with a second or a third rounder for it. I think what the Vikings might try to do is say, and this isn't going to be fair to him because he's obviously outplayed his draft status, but they're like, hey, man, like you were an undrafted free agent. We took a chance on you. Like, we really like you. I think you like it here. So let's work out a friendly deal. Or they could say, like, hey, you're great at run blocking. You're great at getting after the quarterback, but your coverage skills are absolute trash. So we're not going to pay you Fred Warner money because Fred Warner can do it all. Whereas, like, yeah, you're really good at blitzing, you're really good at sniffing out the run, but you are a liability when it comes to the passing game, and you can offer him kind of maybe outside the top 10 money there. I don't think in any way they go straight to paying him top 10 to top 5 money.
oh no, but at least using if he's got a good agent, using that Fred Warner contract gets him, maybe he tries to get 9 or 10, 11 mil a year.
Oh yeah.
Which isn't terrible for him by any means, but it gives him a basis of, okay, I have similar abilities, I maybe lack in this area, but let's push the limit and see what we can get. So, it's something that I thought of the last couple of weeks is, he's going to be coming up and he's going to be wanting money. And where do we sit?
Right. Yeah, I mean, especially with our defense, we're not really in a position to lose the good players we have, so I'm sure they'll figure something out.
I'm sure they will. Yes, Brent, they both are away games. They are. It would have been at Seattle and at Cleveland.
Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh. At Pittsburgh and at Cleveland.
Which, Cleveland, whatever, but I'm glad to get out of that Pittsburgh game. That's a hostile environment. Granted, it's early in the season, so you don't have to worry about the weather, but I'd much rather play in Dublin than Pittsburgh.
I think you're right. And I think we go into that second game against the Browns with a hell of a benefit having to only travel. I think it's an hour flight from Dublin to London.
Right.
So we're on level terms with the Steelers going in as far as adjusting to the time, learning the practice facility. Although I think I watched an interview with, I want to say it's Grenard. He said the only downside to those both being away games is they get the shittier of the two practice fields and locker rooms. Because the home team gets first pick on those.
Yeah.
So that's the only downside, he said, to being away games for international play is you don't get first choice on those.
Yeah. Yeah, the pros and cons of that whole situation have been an interesting topic. That's like, well, it's a con because you're away from your family. You have to be in Europe for 2 weeks. But the pros are obviously like, yeah, it's a neutral environment. You're not having to play a true away game. And London does tend to lean heavily Viking fan base. So the practice facilities, that part does suck because you can imagine their good facilities still aren't that great. So the second tier facilities are probably pretty trash. But
Right.
they're pros. It's 2 weeks. I'm sure they can make it work. It's not like it's going to make them a subpar athlete for having free weights instead of supported weights. I'm sure. I don't know, but
the hot tub fits 2 players instead of having individual ones.
right. I'm sorry. There's no cold tub.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll be okay.
but I mean, from the players themselves, that was like one of the biggest. Like, I shouldn't say complaint. He just mentioned it in the interview. Was like, yeah, I'm excited to play overseas, but we don't get first choice on stuff as the away team. So,
Right.
hell, like I think it was one of the players said that they had never been overseas until we played in London, or we played over. Yeah, it was London last year. Like, never left the country before that, and now he gets to go back to London and to Ireland. Like, for some of these players, it's their first chance to travel and get to someplace new. And the good thing for us is, unfortunately for most people, the city of Dublin was founded by the Nordic people, so we have strong roots there. So hopefully we take we get a good fan base out of that. I know one of the German Vikings fans was telling me that when the first game in Germany was played, there was over 1.5 million people tried to get tickets.
Jeez.
So I could just imagine what the first game in Dublin is going to be like. And then, every year they add a new country or a new place. It is a new, it brings in more people. And for them, because Europe is so much, I don't want to say smaller, but the countries are smaller than the U.S., to go from Germany to Dublin is like going from Minnesota to Indiana,
Right.
not a terrible trip, but still got to travel a little bit. So when you get that many people in one area for one event that only comes around twice a year, you're going to have a lot of competition for those tickets and for those seats. So I'm hoping. We have a big following in Ireland and London and in the UK and Germany. So hopefully those guys snatch up a lot of those tickets and we make it feel like home games for us.
I mean, that's just kind of the fun thing about, like, I know people knock London games because it just doesn't feel the same, and they start at 8:30 Central. I get to early start times kind of suck. I like it. I like being able to watch Red Zone the rest of the year without having to worry about my team. But what I like about London games or just European games in general is the crowd pops off for both sides. Like, it's not a home game for either team. And Euro crowds for sports, for concerts, anything are just extremely lively compared to a lot of American crowds. And so they just get after it. Like, every year we have a London game. I'm seeing people in the stands with just pints of beer, just double fisted. Like, they get after it the entire game. The energy is really electric. Their stadiums are huge, so you can feel that kind of added hype. They're a lot of fun to watch. I think the players kind of feed into that as well. Granted, like historically, teams that play in London or Germany do struggle because of the time change and all that, and the just kind of the internal clock. But as far as the fan atmosphere, like, that's a huge bucket list of mine. Is I want to go to an overseas game and just kind of take in that Euro excitement.
Yeah, I know. I had met some Polish soldiers when I was stationed in Iraq when I worked for NATO, and when I got out of the army, one of them hit me up. They're like, "Dude, we need coaches for American football. Like, there is a big league in Poland, and we need coaches, people who know the game." So he's like trying to get me to go over there. So it's not just the countries we've seen so far. It's a lot. Like, Austria has a really good, and I think the team that won the European Championship last year for like Southern Europe was the Austrian Vikings. So Austria, it's real big. Poland, Germany. I mean, all these countries are getting really into this. So it's only going to grow. And my thought is, are they going to bring back the World League? Some kind of summer or late spring, summer, football, like, okay, not to compete with the UFL, because I think the UFL is a great place for guys to get experience and to learn. And, but I think if I remember right, the last year of the World League, teams would send players to go play from their practice squad. Like, the guys they signed to futures contracts, and so they could get more experience and come back and then, hopefully get an edge up on making the roster the following year. So I wonder if as we grow and as we go to Europe more often, will that league maybe come back?
Right. I mean, we see that a lot in the NBA of players that are drafted high that struggle in the NBA. They kick them over to Lithuania for a couple of years just to get their asses kicked for a couple of years. They come back, and all of a sudden, American NBA is not so hard. They kind of see a step up in their game. So
it's interesting what it can lead to.
Right. And then, yeah, maybe the 2032 Olympics, we can see a more fielded flag football competition. So we're getting down to our final couple minutes here. I'm sure Chesterton and Rob will be back next week. Maybe we'll have some more stories to talk about. If not, I kind of want to go over the division as a whole in the offseason, the rest of the divisions had next week. Because we don't really talk about them much. The competition that we're going to be seeing next year with the receivers that they've added, the defensive players they've added. Anything you want to say before we log off for the week?
No, I just Bella, settle down. Just keep on schooling. I think I'm excited for OTAs to start and see where some of these young players are at.
Right. I'm hoping the Wolves don't get swept tonight. For the love of God, can we at least win one game in this series? It's in Minnesota, so maybe we can not get swept. I don't know. Go Wolves.
Let's hope. Go Wolves. Yeah, pull this one out.
And for those that follow the PWHL, the Minnesota Frost have game 3 today. It's their first game in Minnesota, so go Frost. It's the finals.
Yeah. Bella.
So at least our women's teams know how to get it done.
That's true. I think even the women's tackle football team made it to the finals a couple of years ago.
Hell yeah. Well, go them. Everybody have a great week. Sorry for the delay today. Thank you for sticking around, and we will see you all next week.
Skull.
Skull.
Yeah, yo, it's game time, ain't no messing around. Huddle Sports Network, the best in town. From NFL rumors to the latest trends, we got all your sports, just tune in, my friends. Catch us on Roku, Fire Stick, take your pick. Facebook, YouTube, where the action's slick. Daily shows that drop like a bomb. From 10 to 11, it's Ken and Ken, stay calm. Huddle up, catch the vibe, feel the rush. Get your news, get your fills in the clutch. Over 27 podcasts, we breaking it down. Join the team, Huddle Sports, wear the crown. Live every weekday, it's how we roll. Lions Talk with Jeremy B, we taking a stroll. From 11 to 12, don't miss a beat. We break down the game, make the info sweet. The Daily Huddle Podcast, noon to 1. CST Zone, we're just having fun. Toss your doubts, we bring the facts. Tune into the Huddle.